Hey. Hello? So I'm not even sure. I don't even know what to start with today. So I'm going to let you go ahead and start with something.
Yeah, I don't have a clue. I feel like there was a weird shift last night, at least for me. I don't know if it was, obviously we created the full moon, so whatever that brings in, we set it up.
I don't know about by where you are, but we saw I've never seen it red. I saw it was red last night. It was really cool.
It's been amazing here on the ocean.
I can imagine.
It's been like daylight, and this morning when I saw sunrise, it was like I did a panorama, and it was like it started with the sunrise over on the left-hand side and panned around, and the full moon was on the right-hand side. It was just amazing. It feels the word that came as soon as I said that sentence, the word that came to me was it feels almost like vacant. Not in a bad way, but like a blank slate kind of thing.
Huh.
Like, where do you go from here?
Yeah, that's been pretty consistent.
Yeah. So that's been on my mind this morning. But
I mean, it's funny because I was talking with somebody last week in a session, and we were talking about, there were two major people in this person's life. Funny enough, not her husband, but two major people in her life that suck up most of her attention and energy. And pretty much everything, and which is funny, and the funny part is just because that's typically the spouse, right? So sucking up all your energy and time and obligation, and you do things because you want to please them, or you want to do things to, like accommodate them and blah, blah, blah. But that's what she does with these two other people in her life over her spouse. I think it's really interesting. And she keeps on getting the message that it's time for her to do what it is that she wants to really do, like to really follow her passion. And she can't, she's been looking at it and asking for clarity or setting it up for conscious clarity. And she's like, I'm just not getting anything. And I said, well, what if you imagined that both of those people were not in your life at all, if they were not here, what would you do?
Right.
And then she goes, wow, how did I not even think about that? I said, because you are so entrenched in doing for them, and you have identified so much with doing it for them, that I think that you just lost your focus, because, I mean, it's to a point, it's interesting. It's just an interesting thing. So she's like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to look at that. And that's what I would say probably to anybody right now. Because so many, we're sort of being pushed to get to that place of really stepping into our truth, right? And in many cases, it does, and we've been talking about, so like, this is really a great follow-up to the discussion about leaving all the roles behind, right? And I think that's part of why that feeling of the blank slate comes in, because it's like, okay, well, wow, if I give up all my roles, then what am I? Like, I don't even know, right? If I'm not a mother or a spouse or a friend or, this whatever human, right? I had a lot of people contacted me directly, like, wow, that was so huge. The comment about like not, what if you weren't human?
Yep.
And I'm like, right, because we're really not. This is just a little role that we play. And so if you just say, well, yeah, I'm like, I don't have to be any of it, and I'm all of it at the same time, then it's sort of like this blank slate of potentiality, but we're so not used to it because we're so used to defining what we're going to do next, or how we act based on like how we believe we need to interact with others, right? To appease this person, to allow them to have like their thing. I'm going to give up this thing and I'm going to let them do it. You know, that's a role, you know, to say, yeah, I mean, I have to, whenever we say I have to, or I need to, or whatever, that's all ego, right? So that's all part of a role. And I think that, yeah, that's definitely what's hitting us right now. But, you know, that's really a great exercise to sit there and say, okay, so if these people were not present in my life, what would I be doing?
Well, and it goes beyond that. Last week I was in a hotel and it was just packed, and there was a Beyonce concert that night, and so it was a combination of parents dropping off their kids and then people staying in the hotel that were going to the concert. And I was in the parking lot looking at the hotel, and it was right after we'd done our share last week, and I was feeling into the chaos of all the, it was like, the best I could describe it was like bubbles of people just banging into each other because they didn't have the roles to keep them in their order, so to speak. And it was so interesting to realize that it's like, instead of the roles, it's just simply the connection with the people that keep that same, you know, and I hate to use the word order, but
well, it's communicating through the roles too, right? That's what we're used to.
Yeah. But it was, you know how you look at, you know, water molecules that get excited before they have a state change, whether it's ice or whether it's steam or whatever, and it's like, that's exactly what it was. And it was like, yeah, we're getting ready for a state change.
Well, or they were just changing their state at that time to full, you know, like, and that's the funny thing. If you look at it all from that role perspective. So what they were doing is they were changing all their roles, right? They were getting ready to shift into that role of being, you know, a Beyonce fan, right? Or a you know, like a
empty nester maybe.
Or whatever. I don't know, whatever it is. So, yeah. It is, and so part of it for our conscious clarity is, what is it to do? Like, what do we even do, right? Because everything we do tends to be motivated by who we believe we are.
Right.
I mean, we have so many subtle judgments based on who we think we are and who we think other people are.
Yep.
And we don't even like consciously recognize that, because it's like, it's such an embedded habit. So maybe this week is about the transcending the habits of it.
Or identifying the unseen pieces of it, which I think is what you're saying, which is, you know, what makes up the habit.
Yeah. And so what do we do from there? Like, if we do that and we're totally a blank slate, what do we do? Because I know that's going to be the next question, and I know that will put us in this big void of freakiness. That's what I'm sort of getting.
I can feel that already.
Yeah. So
it's like losing gravity.
Yeah.
You know, that you have to relearn everything.
And then floating in space, and you're like, whoa, what do I do?
Right.
My purpose of being here, right? I mean, I think even coming here is a role, right? So that we're here. And maybe it's, and Leah, what we've talked about is, you know, transcending the roles. And it's not like saying that the roles can't exist at all anymore. It's that we don't base our decisions on, how do we do that? Well, maybe it's getting conscious clarity on how to what the function is to be here when we do transcend all those roles.
And trust that it's all perfect, and that we'll know.
Yeah.
Trust the remembering.
Right, because in doing that, then we are changing. Well, we basically then become so fluid that we can change a role in every minute, right?
Right.
Like, okay, so you need it here, and you need it here, and you need it here, and you need it here to just sort of fill in these gaps or whatever. It also allows us that full potentiality that we haven't realized yet. It can be all of it. Yeah, I feel like we're missing something though. It's an important piece of this.
Yeah. There's what I'm seeing is a deep dark crevice that we're not allowing ourselves to look down in. I think we're preventing ourselves from we're not allowing ourselves to participate in fully in the destruction of this. Whether you want to say destruction or letting go or recreating or redesigning, it's still a limitation of ours. It's like, it's still not getting to that 100%.
Yeah. So, I don't know, something comes into mind that I was triggered about last night. Not a lot, but it was just an annoyance. For some reason that popped into my head, so maybe it's related. So maybe you have to talk around this.
Okay.
So we went to my mother's for dinner. Right, here we go. It always goes down the path of my mother.
Right.
But and what was so interesting was, so I've gotten to, like, up until yesterday, I had felt like I had gotten to a place of a really good flow with her without that like her wanting that dependency. You know what I'm saying? That we've had. So I felt like in the past several weeks or whatever, it's been really good and flowing and easy. But last night, God, we went over her house, and I don't know, like, okay, so this is really judgy, but we were joking around afterward because Brianna and Scott and I came home and we're like, what was that about? Like, we haven't seen her like this in I don't know how long, because it was like, and I was joking saying, well, maybe maybe it's the full moon. Maybe she was trying not to turn into a werewolf. I don't know.
Because it was a full moon.
Because she was so edgy, right? So there's got to be something related to those that would have popped into my head, because I was just sort of like, I let it go, because I was like, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and talk about it. Yeah, last night we just sort of laughed and then let that go. But from the moment I walked in the door, like, she wasn't just talking to us, she was like yelling at us the entire time.
Yeah, I can feel that when you're talking about it.
And I mean, even when she was just having a conversation, she was yelling. And and she was so scattered, like all over the place. And you can even hold a conversation, and yet then she yelled at, it's funny, I don't even remember what we're talking about. We were talking about something, and I looked at my phone. I literally looked at my phone to look up something that was related to what we were talking about. And I mean, I had looked down for maybe 10 seconds, and she's like, God, you guys and your phones, blah, blah. I mean, and I'm like, whoa, like, because she had already been yelling, like the level of conversation was that she was yelling as her baseline. And then, like, when she turned it up, I was just like, and then she wanted, we were ordering dinner, and we were ordering dinner, and she suddenly became obsessed with showing me houses, because apparently, she's taken on, because I told her we've been looking at houses all over the country, for our next move. Apparently she's been doing something along the lines of herself, but then she was really just wanting to show me this $11 million house that she saw. And I was like,
did you tell her to go for it?
yeah, so I told her, like, go for it, Mom. She's like, well, I'm gonna check my lottery ticket, all that kind of stuff. But then she was showing me like this, like 5 or 6 houses. So this was in the middle of, we were talking about ordering dinner, right? After she's yelled at us about even looking at our phones for 3 seconds. So, and the only reason I stopped was that she was yelling so loud, it really was bothering me energetically. Like,
right. I can feel it when you're talking about it.
So.
It almost feels like a desperation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's how she was acting the whole night. So she's like, so I get up to stand there and look at these houses that she was showing me, right? And then she's like, and I'm like, well, Mom, let's order dinner because it's getting late, and it's coming into the dinner rush time or whatever. If I want to order to pick up, blah blah blah. So then she's like, well, go ahead and order, and I'm like, except I have to do that on your computer. And you're showing me home the houses. And then it's funny, so then she's like, oh, okay. And then she lets me get on her computer, and I'm standing there. And the funniest thing is, so like her new thing is she doesn't want to sit down at her computer, right? So she's put one of those really thick, standing pads in her kitchen, and she puts her laptop on her kitchen counter. And she just stands there all the time looking at her computer. But the thing is, what do they call it? Physiologically, you're supposed to have your monitor straight on, your eye gaze, because it's bad for your neck, your back, your eyes, whatever. But the way it was looking, like it's on her counter, so I'm looking down like this, which is uncomfortable, right? And I'm finding the site, and I'm looking at stuff, and so first it's like I have to order, even though she's buying dinner, right? So I have to do this. She's like, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, whatever. And I'm like getting on, I'm asking everybody what they want. And then I ask her what she wants, and she's like, she's like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, what about this? And what about this? Because she's really big for what she eats. And she has all these sensitivities. And then she's like, well, I can't, you know what? I could do it better if I could do it by myself. And I'm like, except you asked me to do this. And I even said that to her. I was like, which is fine, except you asked me to do this, which I'm doing. And this was the whole time we were there last night. It was just like, it was like this desperation. And it was almost like, I didn't even think about it till now. It's like she was yelling because she felt like she couldn't reach me. Mm-hmm. And it was so loud. She was in a townhome, and I'm thinking, holy crap, what do her neighbors even think? Because all she's doing is yelling. But yeah, and we were there for like 2.5 hours. And I mean, when we left, I was just like, I literally was like, well, it's late, and we got to feed our cats. We got to go. Bye. Because I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
But it was like, and she jumped from one thing to another, but the energy like that was like that the entire time. So there's somehow, this is related to what we're talking about, or else it wouldn't come up to mention, because I was even going to mention it. So, and I noticed I was triggered, and I was just like, and the thing that I was thinking about was, why am I triggered? Because it's all her desperation. It's her like needing to scream across the chasm. I don't know. Maybe that's it.
Well, and I'm sure that along with her energy was a level of accusation and blame for
Oh yeah, I mean, that's typical for her though. I'm so used, that's nothing that, like, I just let that roll off. Typically it doesn't even bother me, but for some reason it's like, because it was just one thing after the other. And finally I yelled back at her at something, I can't even remember what it was, which Brianna and Scott like started laughing, and that's okay. What? What was that?
Helpful.
Well, because there was another thing where like I can't remember. She asked me a question. She had bought a new printer. She was showing me the box, and then she was saying, I guess I could throw away this box now, right? And then but she had asked me a question about the printer that had to do with being hardwired or wireless, right? And again, literally, I was looking at the phone to see if I could find what she was asking, the answer to what she was asking, right?
Right.
And so just when she was saying, well, yeah, I guess I could throw away this box, and she's like, well, look, there you go again. And she starts yelling at the phone. And I said, okay, shut up, because I'm looking at my phone to answer the question you just asked me about your printer. Right?
Yeah.
To which when I finally did that, this is how my mother works. So I was like, oh, and then she just like walks away and doesn't say anything for like a couple minutes, because I'm like, just shut up. And that I don't even look at as a projection. I look at it as that was maintaining my, Pi, if I am going to accommodate you in any way, you just need to shut up and stop trying to throw all this shit at me at once.
Right.
And judge and judge and judge and judge. And I'm like, wow. So, and of course I know that judgment always comes from herself, right? It always comes from like her own self-judgment. And
right.
So it was just this frenetic stuff. And I'm thinking, so that must be something that reflects back in the collective level right now.
Like everyone's scrambling to find their new place.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we're talking about that empty slate because nobody knows what that is, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, I have this box of paints and I've got this empty canvas, so I can just throw anything up there. Well, it's like we don't even have the paints anymore.
Well, and sometimes that's like so overwhelming to somebody. Sometimes it's more overwhelming to say, here's your paints, here's your canvas, paint whatever you like, right? Sometimes that's so overwhelming that somebody will never get started.
Right.
Versus saying, well, even if saying you said, well, do this, because then that defines a role, right?
Yep.
So is it throwing everything into chaos even more by us really doing that, which it sort of is.
Absolutely.
But I guess maybe then we need to turn up our ability to drown out the chaos and
and not let the chaos define new roles.
Right.
Because the point of the chaos is to let go of them, not create the need for more.
Right.
Or new and different ones.
Right. And the discussion, I had a lot of discussion last week about, somebody asked me, I actually had multiple people talk to me about this last week, what setting boundaries really means, right? Because when we use the word boundaries in terms of their traditional definition, it implies separation. But what I tell people is I don't really talk about boundaries in terms of separation. I talk about boundaries in terms of maintaining your own space and your own energy and your own identity or whatever, your own
vibration, at least.
Vibration, right?
Right.
And that to me is a boundary, because you're saying it's basically, to me, not a boundary, but a requirement. To say, you know what, and it's a requirement and worthiness to say, this is my space, this is my vibration, and you can take it or leave it, but this is my choice, and I'm not going to bow down, I'm not going to give away myself to a role to you for it.
Right.
And it's all in love, right? It's not an exclusion, and you're welcome to join me, but I'm not going to give myself away any longer, right?
Or require myself to fill a role that you created.
Right, in your mind.
Right.
Expectations. Yeah, that's been a big one this past week. So I've had that conversation multiple times.
Yeah. I know this is off the subject. I have to share this with you. Remember in Mount Shasta when we had the waitress?
Uh-huh.
Well, we had a checkout girl at the grocery store. It was the same thing. And it was just like, I was in tears by the time we left. She clearly had not had even the first lesson on how to be here.
So we spreading.
And we went back the next day and I didn't see her. And I was like, yeah, she had to go back to the school.
She had to go back to school. Of course, people watching this are like, what are you talking about? Okay, so now we're going to have to explain that briefly to somebody who doesn't understand. So,
but if you think about it, that's what we're talking about.
It really is.
But I mean, it was...
Well, not feeling the role of being human very well, right?
Exactly. It was hysterical.
So to make this really, really compact to anybody who's watching it, it's something that started in Mount Shasta because there's this awareness, and I'm not joking, this is absolutely the truth, that is very obvious that there are many beings that were not, that were sort of walked in or came in from other planets, dimension. I mean, we're all from all other places. But anyway, people have like, it's almost like they've created a body to be here at this time, and they just haven't finished going through Being Human School 101. There's just, there are tells on it. And it sounds really out there, but if you have experienced it, you totally understand what this is.
Yep.
There's no mistaking it at all. So anyway, yeah. Well, we should all start acting like non-human. I don't know.
Maybe that's what we're behaving like to others.
Maybe that's why my mother felt like she had to yell the entire time we were there. Can you hear me? Can you understand me?
Yeah.
Oh, somebody who's, you know, like somebody yelling loudly at somebody who's blind, you know?
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, and to be honest, what we're seeking is more of a natural existence for us than what we've been doing.
Right, we're just not used to doing it. It's out of our habit.
Which may be why it's so hard.
Or
we perceive it as hard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because we're sort of like in this place of like, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
I don't remember what I'm supposed to do. How do I do this without all those like definitions and requirements and obligations?
And boxes and guidelines and rules and
yeah, and there's this yearning. It's funny. There's this yearning I have found, not really a yearning, this readiness to change my environment.
It's like the snowball has started rolling downhill.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, inaction doesn't stop it.
No, not at all. Even more so than ever before. And I just keep on seeing, I just keep on seeing it. And it's funny because I can feel, so like in working with clients and talking to people that I've been talking to and whatever, and seeing people around me, I can feel the tension of that snowball rolling, like in different parts of their existence, right?
Right.
And I'll be like, yeah, you might want to look at this, might want to look at this, might want to look at this, without wanting to convey it's really important to look, you know, like without like making them, because then they act from fear. right? Versus trust, where it's like, well, and really typically when I say this, so anybody watching, by the way, I'm saying you might want to look at this, and then I just pause as you're, whatever. Typically it's because there's some kind of friction in this one place, and it's typically the crack, that crevice that you're talking about that we don't want to look in, right?
Yep.
And I know for myself as well, for all of us.
Right.
It's not just other people, it's myself as well. It's but the key is being willing to accept it and being like, okay, if you're even ultimately getting to that place of, okay, even if I am not willing to look at it or I'm uncomfortable looking at it, then I'm okay trusting that to change it is going to cause a little bit of an earthquake.
Right.
Or a tsunami or whatever.
Yeah.
The challenge that I've had in the past week has been, it's funny because I have an assistant that started with me this past week and, going through like just all the basic stuff. And then I'm just like, well, then I go out there and think, what do I need an assistant for? I don't have any role anymore. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. What am I going to do? Like, why do I even need this? Like, it's funny because it sort of does refocus me, but I have been constantly in that state, like, all right, what am I going to do then?
Well, and I've also been looking at things from the perspective of, okay, I have this set of things that I do, and it's in losing the roles doesn't necessarily mean that I have to throw out everything I do.
No, but it's just to do them in a different place.
Right. And look at the motivation behind how and why I was doing things.
Right.
And that shifts so much, because there's so many things that you do out of obligation in a sense of the role, or that's how the role's defined. But yet if you come from a different place, the activity may be the same. It's just the basis is different.
Yeah. Yeah, and the challenge right now, another thing that's come up a lot in this discussion, that is a big challenge. One of the big challenges right now is when we're guided to do something, to be like hyper aware of where that guidance is coming from, if it's truly coming from higher consciousness, right?
Right.
And not a very cleverly masked ego.
Right.
That's trying to maintain or preserve a role or a function or an obligation, right, because then that preserves the feeling of value of the individual, right?
Right.
So, and the other thing is, if something keeps on happening that's preventing, so like this is what a lot of people are getting into this sort of stuck place for is, if we're what am I going to say now? Oh, if you are pushed away from like you're trying to do something and you come up against blockages, right?
Right.
Some people will just, many like who become more observant will be like, well, maybe it's not highest and best for me to do that, right?
Right. They just automatically jump to that.
Instead of saying, is it truly not highest and best for me to do it, or is my ego creating external blockages so that I can use that as an excuse and claim victim to it?
Right. Right.
And I have people say, well, how do you even tell the difference of that? It's like, very carefully.
Right.
So what do you suggest to somebody who says that, who asks that?
I guess, and this is just what I've done for myself, is focus on what you're doing without being attached to the outcome. And I feel like that lets the highest and best come through.
Yeah, because we get a lot of stuff right now, and myself included, with all this change, right? We have a lot of stuff going, and it's very uncomfortable sometimes to just totally let go of everything, right?
Right.
Meaning we're letting go of major roles, right? So I'm letting go of even whatever I had left of the, mother of bringing up a child role, so that I'm not connected to my kids all the time, right?
Right.
So, and the funny thing is, I've never been somebody, I'm not somebody who has really identified themselves, like so many do, is all they ever do is based on their motherhood and taking care of their kids, dealing with their kids, assuaging their fears and all that kind of stuff. And it's, yeah, I've done that, but it's not been my identity. It's been only a piece of me, right? Versus the majority of what I'm doing. But having the youngest move out is jarring, because not only is it that, it's also, now it's a different part of my life. Right now, my kids are pretty much grown, and yes, I'm still their mother, but it's a different role altogether. And letting go of, so here's the point is, even going through, this weekend, we went through and cleaned out my daughter's room.
Right.
And I'm selling some stuff, just to get clear it all out and whatever. And so then you start, I don't know, you get this sort of a knot, not really a knot in your stomach, but this discomfort. You're going through discomfort. It's well, am I jumping the gun? Am I doing this too quickly? And there's weird stuff, and then you just feel weird about you avoid putting it up for sale, or you avoid doing the yard sale, you avoid, you know what I'm saying? It's these little things that, or if something happens, oh, well, see, I'm not supposed to get rid of that now, or something like that. And then it's wait, no, what am I acting from? Am I acting from discomfort? If I'm acting from discomfort, that's totally ego.
Right.
Which means then for me to step back and just flow with it, right? That observation.
Yeah, it's it's hesitance and the feeling the need to preserve a piece of it just in case.
Yeah. So that's really, for what I tell people all the time, is if you feel uncomfortable about something, because we're so used to saying, oh no, that's my gut. And I'm no, it's really your ego trying to preserve something, actually.
Because if it's projecting in your gut.
Right. And sometimes, sometimes the ego serves a good purpose in that, right? Because people say, oh, well, the ego's there to protect us. Now the ego tries to protect us in situations that it believes that we need to be protected, but that's acting from fear versus trust, right? Which is not higher guidance. So the key is, if it's uncomfortable, right, and you say, well, let me feel into the discomfort. What is the discomfort about?
Right. Yeah. There's something to look at, and that's not that what you're doing is wrong.
Right.
Highest and best, whatever.
Yeah. So
I'm feeling really disjointed today. What I keep hearing is to just allow myself to flow into that blank slate.
Yeah.
Which that's exactly what it feels like, that it's just
Well, and the question that I end up having is then if, well, number one, flowing into the blank slate, but number two, also trusting on getting the conscious clarity from higher guidance as to what to create from there.
Right. Or allowing your powerful self to fill that blank slate.
Right, because versus filling it with stuff just because we feel uncomfortable with the blank slate.
Right.
Now that's a big difference, right?
Huge difference. Huge.
Because we can easily fill things with stuff because that's our biggest thing right now.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is everybody I talk to is like, I'm so busy. I'm so like, I have so much stuff going on and da da da. And I'm like, yeah, it's full for I always say it's full for everybody right now because there's a lot of change going on.
Right.
But it's so funny because, you know, even like supposedly we're supposed to have like a neighborhood barbecue next weekend or whatever. And they've been talking about this for 6 months, right? So there are like 4 of us that are on this email thing and PM and Facebook. And there's this one of the neighbors, all she ever does is talk about how tired she is, how busy she is, how much she's doing, right? And yet she's the one who's like, well, I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this, right? And I'm like, well, you go and do that just so you can keep on filling that slate. You know? Right. And I mean, it was really funny because, I don't know, as of a couple weeks ago, she had said in this email stream, oh, I will do a flyer to put in everybody's mailbox. Like, you know, this was like several weeks ago. Now we're like the week before, and it's a holiday weekend, which I think, oh, God, we've been talking about this for 5 months. So one of the other people on the list said, well, I talked to so-and-so and so-and-so, and I let them know, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so several weeks ago, this one said she was going to do a flyer and put it in everybody's mailbox, right? So then she's like, so somebody started an email thing this morning, like, oh, I guess, you know, since it's next weekend, we should, you know, finish up the plans for this. I'm like, it's only a barbecue. It's not like a 4-course meal, you know, it's a potluck barbecue. And the woman who's always so busy, and the one who had actually volunteered to make the flyers is like, oh, well, I guess I can throw together a flyer today if nobody else has done one. And she's like going on and on about, oh, but I've been doing this and this and this, and work's been a bear, and blah, 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 blah. And then I usually don't even respond. I just like watch this thread of discussion that goes on, right?
Right.
And I finally just said to her, well, I never even thought about doing one because you volunteered to do one several weeks ago. And then somebody else in the list said, yeah, me too. I'm like, why would we have done one? Because you said you were going to do one.
Right.
But the thing is, like, I listen to that, and I listen to so many who are talking, like, this is really common for people right now. Oh, there's this and this and this. And part of it is, you know what? This is something for everyone to look at too. If you are so busy, using the word busy, which is a very ego-based word, right? You're so busy. What is it? Yeah. Well, there's expectations around that, right? If you're so busy that you feel like you cannot breathe.
Right.
What is really a really powerful exercise to do around all of this is to step back, to write down everything you're doing, and to connect it with the roles that you play, to say, okay, what role do I feel like I have to fulfill by doing this? And am I doing this as a role, or am I doing this from my heart because I want to do it?
Right.
Because we never stop to do that. We just keep on adding more shit onto the list.
Right.
Because we think, oh, well, because this particular woman is she is a primary caretaker grandmother, let's say, because her daughter had a child really young and apparently was with her, whatever. And
wow.
Anyway, so she not only is she a primary caretaker or grandmother, but she also works a full-time job. She also volunteers at some other place, and she's always doing something at someplace else, right? So the question is, like, what is she doing all this stuff for, right? And I'm not doing that to pick on her. I'm just doing it just as an example, because there's so many out there, right? Because I hear people saying, oh, well, I've got to do this and this and this, and plus I've got to go to every single one of my child's, like, soccer games, and I've got to go to all of this for my kid, and I have to do this for, I have to do this because it's something my husband and I do together, and then it's like they get down to and then when was the last time you did something just for you?
Right.
Because you wanted to do it.
Right.
And so many will say, but you can't, how do you do that? You can't just stop being a mother. You can't just stop being a spouse. You can't, but it's like, you can change what you do in that relationship.
Exactly.
And after somebody watched our video from last week, they PM'd me and said, so they have three kids, two who are like preteen and teen, and one who's like a youngster, who said, so then what you're saying is that I don't need to do any of this stuff for them, that I just need to sort of hold that space and support them, and if they do it, they do. If they don't, they don't. I said, well, yeah, the older ones, and like the younger one, you're sort of there to help them. Yeah, you've agreed to take that role on for the time being, but also not to give yourself up completely to that role. That's the difference.
Right.
Like, and yeah, actually it makes it a lot easier to be a parent when you're not like taking that on as your value, like the value in your life is being that role, right?
Right.
And I see this, it's really funny, is I saw a lot of stuff on Facebook over the weekend about, oh, I'm so glad the kids are going back to school. I had no time to myself all summer. And I'm just like, but that's your choice.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And we have it so embedded in our culture because our culture says, oh, for you to be a good parent, you have to fill every single spare moment that your child has with your attention. Like, right. And it's your responsibility for their happiness.
And how could you be happy any other way?
Exactly. Right. Because that's, like the only time we could be happy is if our kids are happy. Right. Which is really a downward spiral in many cases. So,
right.
Yeah, this is all this stuff that's unraveling and coming to the surface. So, yeah, it's a great exercise that's coming to me for all of us to do, is to write down a list of what we fill our time with, what we fill the space with, and say, well, am I doing this from my heart?
Yeah, look at the motivation behind it.
Right. Am I doing it because it makes me feel good, because that person being happy makes me happy, because that means underneath it, it means that I put value on myself by how I'm making somebody else happy. Meaning I can only be happy if somebody else is happy. That's externalization versus saying, when I come from a place of happiness and joy, like I can hold that space, and if they don't have the best time, that's their choice. But like I also am more effusive, and it's easier for me to share myself when I come from that space of self-nourishment, and not from saying, I'm only happy if you're happy, because then you're always in depletion.
Right.
It's like, my daughter who's, she's been away for 2 weeks, and she's already tweeting about how like blah, 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 and you like, and she's lonely and, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, so you've been there for 2 weeks. You just started class this week.
Right.
You transferred in, and yes, it's awkward transferring in, because then you have people who made their circles in the first 2 years of school. But give it time. You just started at a new job. You're just meeting new people. It's only been 2 weeks. And I can't sit there and go down to where she's living and be like, okay, let's go out together, and I'll make sure you find somebody to have a play date with, like, it's just not my job.
Right.
It's saying, you know what? I love you and we miss you, and I know you're going to do great.
Right.
And I can suggest to you ideas of things you can do, like maybe joining some, extracurricular activities. There's an idea, but I can't do it for you. And if you choose not to, that's fine, but don't complain to me about it. So you'll find your way. That's letting them go. Letting them, like, helping them giving them ideas, or helping them like get a perspective of the landscape, but then just letting them do what they're going to do because it's their journey. Yeah. That's going on a lot right now. It's just, there's all of this, and we could talk in circles about all of this stuff. There's just, and you're saying it feels disjointed, but it's all connected to that same thing.
Yeah, it is.
And ultimately comes down to, I choose whether I am nourished and happy and in a space of love, or whether I create a victimhood for myself to exist in a place of lack all the time. It's my choice.
Right.
I create my circumstances, I can change them. I create my roles and I can change them. And I see a lot of people walking away from stuff that it's really uncomfortable for them to walk away, but their higher voice is becoming so loud that there's no choice anymore.
Right. Everything around them has to redefine and fall away to support that new level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then there's A, getting to that, and B, not only getting to that, but like A, getting to that, and B, getting to a place of trusting the blank slate. Like, you know what it makes me think of is, what was it? I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago, we were talking about the playground, like the New Earth playground. It's almost like we walk through the gate and we're like, great, but we don't know what to do now. We don't remember what to do yet.
Right.
Well, it feels like more and more we're getting there, like collectively too, right? And those of us who've been there have been like sort of holding space while we're still playing in the old world and in the new one at the same time. That world, old multiverse and new multiverse, however you want to look at it. And so the key is to trust, and maybe it's a matter of that we're just going to be in this space of holding that being, right, until everyone sort of crosses into, past the gate, or however you want to look at it, right? Because there's no requirement in doing.
Right. Right. Yeah, and the joy comes from just being.
Yeah.
Which is not where we've been consciously.
No. Wow. Something shifted there because I can feel that.
Yeah, I feel like something's unwinding.
All right. I think all of that today.
Right.
You ready?
Yeah.
I could go out and unwind.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You're what?
Not sure I'm back from that.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
It was like so much, and there was like so much that collectively we want to let go of, and there's all these knots everywhere, and it was just like, just sit in this space, just sit here, and then they started to dissipate, and that felt so good. And I was like, all right, now I'm going to stay here, and stay here, and stay here, and I had my cat, starts chirping at my feet. What he always says when we're doing this. I felt good. I felt really good.
I saw so much, and there were so many things that I was like, oh yeah, and I couldn't remember one single one of them right now.
About the same, yeah. I saw a lot of stuff, and then I was just like, it just sort of flew through, though. It was like, made me think of, you remember the old microfiches in the library and stuff,
Yep.
You would like zoom through them when you were just like fast forwarding. That's sort of what I was seeing. It was like zoom, zoom, like all this stuff. Just like, oh, okay, I'll just like watch. That's fine.
Yeah. At one point, I saw myself pass through like that gate or doorway you were talking about right before we went out there, and it was like almost like stepping through a screen to where only certain things could get through. Mm-hmm. And I felt like what I left it was like the word attachment came to me, but it wasn't attachments. It was almost like places where things could attach, like anchors almost. Mm-hmm. And it was like, that was what was, keeping me one side or the other. And I was like, okay, but now I want to go back, but I don't want to pick those same anchors back up.
Right.
So like I could come back, but without those anchors, I couldn't come all the way into where I'd been. Mm-hmm. And it was such an interesting place to be without all those anchors. It was like feeling the sensation of being everything. Mm-hmm. All including, space dust and, fish and birds and air. And, it was like, yeah, I'd like to just stay there.
Oh, absolutely. That felt great.
Oh.
Definitely needed this morning. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I definitely did.
All right. So we'll see where this week goes.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.